Good evening. I'm Haylee Ficuciello. Tonight, we take you across Western United States where federal prosecutors are unveiling a series of serious criminal cases, ranging from multi-million-dollar fraud schemes targeting veterans to violent threats, international torture convictions, and major narcotic and immigration operation. This is Englebrook Independent News Federal Crime Report. A Kent, Washington woman has been sentenced to federal prison for orchestrating a year-long fraud scheming that exploited programs designed to help nation's most severe disabled veterans. Kelly M. Lee Corral, 58, was sentenced to 17 months in prison after prosecutors proved she fraudulently obtained $1.1 million in veteran administration benefits. According to federal prosecutors, Lee Corral falsely claimed she was wheelchair-bound, bedridden, and unable to care for herself, requiring around-the-clock assistance. But investigators uncovered a very different reality. She traveled extensively, including trips to Mexico, Jamaica, Tennessee, and Las Vegas, often without caregivers. She also purchased a second home in Las Vegas while collecting benefits meant to be for vulnerable veterans. Miss Lee Corral broke the trust that she had with her fellow veterans, stated by the U.S. District Judge James L. Robert. Prosecutors say Lee Corral recruited her son and sister into the scheme, falsely listing them as caregivers, even as they were working other jobs at the same time. Kelly Lee Corral seeks 17 months prison and $932,000 in restitution. Her son seeks 14 months in prison, and her sister seeks time served and supervised release. The fraud spanned more than a decade, from 2012 through 2024, and prosecutors say it funded a lifestyle of luxury homes, vehicles, gambling, and international travels. In Oregon, federal authorities are prosecuting two separate but serious cases, one involving violent online threats and the other tied to international narcotic money laundering. First, a Portland man accused of threatening both a public official and a minor online. According to court documents, juror allegedly posted messages including, "I love challenging when hunting my prey." He also targeted a minor who attempted to counter protests, sending repeat threats across multiple accounts. Juror has pled not guilty. If convicted, he faces up to 5 years in federal prison. Meanwhile, in Medford, a Mexican national unlawfully residing in the United States is accused of laundering millions of drug trafficking proceeds. Federal investigations say Aruba used 3 businesses to move $13 million to Mexico, including $7 million linked to narcotic activity. Undercover agents report that when he told the funds came from the drug dealing, Algara allegedly responded, "You sell whatever you want. You are a merchant." Authorities say he charged 10% commission, referring to it as a bribe, while structuring transactions to avoid detection. He remains in federal custody pending further proceedings. A former Syrian prison chief has been found guilty in Los Angeles for committing acts of torture and lying to U.S. immigration officials to gain entry into the country. Samir Osman Oska, 73. Prosecutors say Oska oversaw brutal torture at Andhra Prison in Damascus, including suspended prisoners from ceilings, beating them with cables, using so-called magic carpet torture devices. Victims testified they were folded, beaten, and subject to extreme physical and psychological abuse. Aksha now faces decades in prison after being convicted on multiple counts including torture and immigration fraud. An Australian national is now facing charges for allegedly assaulting a TSA officer at Los Angeles International Airport. Authorities say the suspect grabbed the officer, pulled his identification lanyard, and slammed him into a glass wall after accusing him of stealing a passport. A former university police sergeant has pled guilty to possession more than 600 files of child sexual abuse material. Federal agents traced the activity to his home through an IP address during an undercover investigation. He now faces up to 20 years in federal prison at sentencing in June. In Nevada, federal courts have handed down major sentencing in cases involving child exploitation, narcotic distribution, and large-scale fraud. A California man has been sentenced to 10 years in prison after attempting to arrange sexual abuse of a child using an encrypted message app. A convicted felon now faces 11 years in prison after authorities seized over 600 grams of methamphetamine, multiple firearms, including a ghost gun, ammunition, and distribution records. A Nevada businessman is accused of importing and selling misbranded prescription drugs, generating more than $1.9 million in revenue. Prosecutors say the products were falsely labeled natural and distributed nationwide. In Utah, a member of the Florida 13 gang has been sentenced to 14 years in federal prison for racketeering activity, including attempted murder and firearm trafficking. In Arizona, federal prosecutors filed 197 immigration-related criminal cases in just 1 week. Cases include illegally re-entry, human smuggling, high-speed pursuits, endangering lives. In New Mexico, a federal jury convicted a man of sexually abusing multiple minors over several years. He now faces a mandatory minimum of 30 years in prison, alongside with lifetime registration requirements. In Alaska, an Angkor doctor has been sentenced to 6.5 years in prison for a sweeping fraud scheme involving underdosing patients, billing for medication never administered, evading more than $4 million in taxes. Authorities say the scheme lasted nearly 2 decades and put patients at serious medical risk. From fraud schemes targeting veterans to violent crimes, organized gangs, and international human rights violation, federal authorities say these cases reflect an ongoing effort to hold offenders accountable across jurisdiction. I'm Haylee Ficuciello. This is Englebrook Independent News Federal Crime Report. Stay informed, stay vigilant. Good night.